As of the 28th of January 2022, The Legend of Vox Machina will be hitting Amazon Prime, an event that has been greatly anticipated ever since the actual play D&D series Critical Role created a Kickstarter project for it back in March 2019. To give you a little bit of background on the project, on March 4th, 2019, Critical Role launched their Kickstarter project after having teased it for fans a few weeks prior. These runes were quickly deciphered by fans and were translated as the following: "Help us animate Vox Machina." Though Critical Role's second campaign was underway at the time, the team was eager to head back to their roots and bring this first campaign to life through the medium of animation. And they decided that crowdfunding was the best way to go about this. According to the Kickstarter page itself, CEO of Critical Role, Travis Willingham, and eventual casting director of the show, Sam Riegel, had been putting in the work of pitching this animated series to various Hollywood executives, but the two Critical Role cast members ultimately decided that crowdfunding was the way to go. Whether this was down to a desire to retain as much creative control as possible, or if the offers they received weren't ideal, we're not sure. But it would seem that their instinct to crowdfund was right. The project's initial goal of $750,000 was reached after just 40 minutes of the project going live, with the campaign eventually reaching the staggering total of $11,385,499, surpassing Mystery Science Theater 3000 for the most money raised on the platform for a film and TV project. This money surpassed the stretch goals put in place for the series and allowed the team to begin production on a 10-episode arc, which would include the introduction of Vox Machina and the entirety of the Briarwood Arc, which involves Vox Machina's Percy coming face to face with those who took everything from him. We will be following Vex, Vax, Scanlan, Pike, Keyleth, Percy, Grog, and of course, Trinket the Bear in this delightful D&D romp. If you were a Kickstarter backer, like I was, or even if you have just been curious about how D&D can translate as an animated series and have never seen an episode of the wildly popular D&D show, let's get settled in and say bidet to this brand new animated series. This review will include some spoilers for The Legend of Vox Machina's first 3 episodes, the 3 available at the time of posting this review. So I do suggest you go and watch them before you listen to me chat about them. This isn't a review of the whole first season of the show. I've currently only seen the first 6 episodes, so do keep that in mind as we progress. Make sure to let us know if you want to see more reviews of future episodes as they're available by hitting like and subscribe and all of that good stuff. The characters. It becomes clear immediately that this show's goal is to subvert the glorious heroes coming to save the day archetype, with a band of mercenaries taking on the evil plaguing the land and meeting a grisly end because of that. Anyone who doesn't know Vox Machina just yet can probably surmise that they aren't going to be the heroes that they are expected to be. That is a theme we can see throughout these first 3 episodes in particular. The group of anti-heroes who happen to band together is as much of a recipe for disaster as you might think, with the 2 characters who lean towards the more traditional good will prevail attitudes, Pike and Keyleth, being unable to counteract the sheer level of mischief from everyone else.
Maybe we try doing some good this time?
Boring.
Importantly though, these differing attitudes play off of each other well, and even those members of Vox Machina who are a little more jaded come across as likable rogues, especially in Vax's case. However, it's no surprise that these characters are well developed and likable. Our voice actors have been nurturing them and workshopping them for years now. Even before they were Critical Role, they were being honed from the comfort of the cast's home game. When you think about just how much these characters have been realized, you can't help but feel safe when viewing the show. At this point, they're basically real people, as well as gods. When we examine the side characters, or NPCs I guess, I would be remiss if I didn't start off with the one and only Gilmore, played by Sunil Malhotra, who easily steals every single scene he is in. Between his wise advice and his flirty exchanges with Vax, I find myself beguiled by glorious Gilmore. Another one of the standouts for me has to be the endlessly patient Lady Allura Vysoren, played by Indira Varma, who, unfortunately for her, often ends up herding Vox Machina more often than not. This well-respected arcanist and member of the Tal'Dorei Council is just as captivating in the series as she was when she was played by Matt Mercer himself. Speaking of Matt Mercer, I love that he has his place in this show through this ever-suffering god. The story. Vox Machina starts off this adventure out of work and out of pocket. Having alienated those who have hired them previously and chopped off their heads, they are desperate, but fortunately for them, so are Sovereign Uriel and the Council of Tal'Dorei, who have exhausted all of their options and are left with Vox Machina to seek out and take out whatever is plaguing the outskirts of Vermont. Personally, I think this is a brilliant introduction to the party, taking them from down-on-their-luck mercenaries to unlikely heroes in a succinct but enthralling way. The first few episodes also lead us into the Briarwood Arc of the show, which takes the viewer straight from the first couple of rough and tumble episodes to enemies of Vox Machina that are much less straightforward. The Briarwoods pose a threat that puts Vox Machina's standing with Tal'Dorei in jeopardy, and therefore must be handled in a much more subtle way. It's a nice juxtaposition that lets us get to know the characters in a completely different way. It also introduces two characters that make the audience ask themselves, how can it be bad if so hot? Silas and Delilah Briarwood. This arc was also the first time I caught myself remembering how the actual play version of it worked out. Having that comparison was exciting at first, but then I recalled a few things that the animated version simply couldn't include in that scene without derailing the action. Specifically, Vax's thoughts when he was fearing for his life. If this show makes viewers who haven't watched it before want to go back and watch the web series, this sort of thing will add a level of context and depth that will not have been possible in any other pieces of media. I can't wait to see how that plays out. The music. It's time to face it, music was always going to be an important part of this series. The number of dedicated playlists there are to D&D to allow players to set themselves up with thematic music, allowing them to lose themselves within the story, is enormous. The specific music Matt Mercer brought to the table for Vox Machina's actual play series has to be some of my most played. Shadow of the Sun, The Endless Past 2, and Encampment by Justin Bell being some of my favorites. Along with that though, you have to remember one very important thing. Scanlan Shortholt. Played by musical savant Sam Riegel, Scanlan's bardic inspiration was one of many beloved parts of Vox Machina's campaign. The Legend of Vox Machina's original music both set the scene for the beautiful sweeping shots of Tal'Dorei we get to see come to life in the series, and introduces some absolute bops. In a ridiculously bardy move, Scanlan introduces Vox Machina to the Council via a rousing song, literally singing their praises. Also, I've had the song from episode 3 stuck in my head for days, and I'm not mad about it. Without overloading the series with it, these songs are interspersed to great effect, proving why every adventuring party needs a Scanlan. The animation. Now, if my review has been a little too glowing for you so far, here comes my biggest criticism of the show. I mentioned previously the beautiful sweeping shots of the world Vox Machina inhabits, and I wasn't talking rubbish. The artwork is gorgeous and the character design is spot on, but for me, the animation leaves something to be desired. Does it make the show unwatchable? Of course not, but there are a few points in which it can be quite underwhelming and a little bit jarring. A lot of the time, the shots of the party themselves can be quite stagnant, which looks particularly funny when they're battling a dragon, which comparatively is animated like lightning-breathing butter. The quality of the animation definitely goes up in combat scenarios like that, and that's a good thing. Though it would be amazing to see a little improvement on the animation in Season 2. Check out Sovereign Uriel, Vanellope von Schweetzing into his throne. Something that you will be aware of if you've watched the series already is the sheer amount of blood and gore that is contained in the show. People's skulls are sliced, they're chopped in half, their skin-peeled faces frozen in the terrified poses they died in. It's a lot. And guess what? I love that. Not in a weird way, but this is the reality of a D&D campaign coming to life. There's going to be a lot more blood and guts than we have to really think about when we're theatre of the minding these scenarios. It's successfully bringing that aspect of D&D to life, but what about overall? Is it D&D? So, is this show able to bring across the D&D/RPG experience? It's a resounding hell yes from me. There are a bunch of little Easter eggs and full-on holiday gifts in this series that will leave a role player feeling seen. A few examples I have include frequent use of the Bag of Holding, mention of everyone's favourite band of mercenaries, the Murder Hobos, kicking off our introduction to the heroes in a tavern. There are so many treats to be found here. There are even a few instances where someone has obviously failed their check, such as Vex trying to smooth things over with the owner of the tavern they trash. Speaking of our dear Vexalia, the visualization of her ranger ability to sense her favourite foe is done well. Though her physical pain when sensing them is not something I've encountered before, it doesn't mean that it's not a valid take because it's D&D and we can make it whatever we want. Vex's study and trauma tied to her favourite foe could absolutely translate in this way. I also really appreciate Pike, in general, but also in how she is well portrayed as the team's support. She's constantly healing and buffing everyone else's weapons, Not only does it show her worth in this team, it also makes her a target, which is the pain that forever healers out there know all too well. Of course, there's also Grog's rage, another one of the fan favorite moments we were all excited to see come to life. I like that it's not thrown around willy-nilly, it's reserved for crucial moments in the show, and it works well. Something that I'm glad to see shine through is the sheer silliness that the party takes part in consistently. Stuff like punching each other in the groin and being unable to defeat the big bad that is a regular, everyday door is so relatable. I can't wait to see what other shenanigans they have in store for us. The Legend of Vox Machina has been renewed for a second season, and I am personally over the moon to know that there's going to be more on the way, with a hilarious little nod to Critical Role's second campaign popping up in the form of in-game erotic fiction, Tusk Love. I'm sitting here with my fingers crossed, hoping we can get a Mighty 9 series. That was my review of The Legend of Vox Machina's first few episodes. If you want me to review the show in its entirety, click the like and subscribe buttons to let us know, or sound off in the comments. Also, if you want to see how the internet is full of differing opinions, and that is perfectly fine, check out my colleague Alex Meehan's review of the show. It's always great to see another perspective, so take a look over on Dicebreaker.com. Click the join button to join Dicebreaker Plus and see a bunch of other not-so-tabletop videos. Check out our merch using the link below, and most importantly, have a good day.